hate it when we hear that families aren't aware of us, not because we think that we're right for every single student, we do not, every person, but we just at least want families to know that, their choices and their options to be educated in those. We know that we are not the right fit for every single student, but we think for the students, that are at Stewart Home, we're a pretty great fit for those students. Today we have 360 students. They're from 39 states and 9 foreign countries. So all the students, about 10% of our students are from the state of Kentucky, to give you a better idea. All the students that are from foreign countries, they do have U.S. citizenship somehow. Either they were born in the U.S. or their parents they've acquired U.S. citizenship. So we have 360 students and we have about 160 employees. This year we are having we're celebrating our 120th anniversary. We were founded in 1893. So we've evolved through the years. In 1893, I'll just give you a little bit of the history. When we were founded by Dr. Stewart, we're now in our 4th, 5th, and 6th generations of Dr. Stewarts. Or 4th and 5th of Dr. Stewarts, I should say. But in 1893, we were founded because Dr. Stewart really saw the need for education. There wasn't, the approach of teaching people with special needs and really sending them to school, that was not in place. He saw the need for it. Stewart Home was Kentucky Military Institute. That's what it was used for originally. And Dr. Stewart had been a cadet, both he and his father, so he was familiar with it. They moved outside of Louisville, so it came up for auction. And at the very same time, he opened it up, and 17 students moved with him. And so he started Stewart Home at that point. And it's just
it was that old that we were first.
Well, it's because it's so old, we have grown through the years. Originally, because special education's, we've been around much longer than special education has been in schools. We were, for a while, a lot of our students that are now in their 70s, we accepted and they came to school when they were 5 and 6 years old because they were seeing their siblings, they were seeing their peers go to school, and they, of course, wanted to go to school. So that's really the age that we were beginning to enroll students. Now our youngest student is 15, but we typically enroll students as a post-secondary option. And our oldest student age is 83. Now I can tell you last week we enrolled one student that was 52 and another that was 74. So, we don't enroll just students as post-secondary opportunities. We sometimes a student will be with a family and then come to us when, typically the parents may get ill or something like that. They'll begin to start thinking about it. We really want to encourage families to start thinking about it before it gets to that point because that's not in the best interest of the family or the student at that time. I'm going to pass around just so that you can see. I think you'll get a better glimpse of what we do by seeing some of these kind of activity books. And this one in particular just has some of our recreational therapy or art therapy program. Let's look at that.
Tell them how many acres.
Oh, it's on. We're on 850 acres, but we only use the front 75 to 80. So we've just got sort of a little perimeter road around us, and we just use that front area, which is really nice because the other 750 to 800 acres surround us. And so, we do have a equestrian program, so we use that for a portion of it, but cattle, our students, most of them, not all of them, just love animals. So our equestrian program and all the other animals on my campus just do wonders. So I'm going to pass around our calendar too, just so you can see some of the beautiful pictures of our students' faces in it. It's got just a couple of the activities you'll see. Robiger? Yes, he plays.
He has got just the most beautiful smile.
Oh,
and I've never seen him without that smile.
No,
on his
Robiger
face.
never. Robiger has the best attitude. so you can get a better idea. And there's a video on our website that I would encourage you to look at. I was going to show it, but I just think you can get a better idea if we talk through this and I can answer your questions. So, but yeah, it's just StewardHome.com, so you can go and look at our video. And it really shows the campus as well. But this is our girls' side, our women's side, and then our men live on this side of campus. So you can see our equestrian program down here. You can actually see some of our horses. We have 12 horses. We just got 2 new Belgians, and I just learned, I thought they were Clydesdale horses. They are not, they're Belgians. And we have a beautiful cart that they pull that our students love. We love getting to see them all around campus. So, but we're divided into 2 different areas, and every single student has their own room. So it's a lot like college. That's what a lot of students call us, is their college. Because honestly, every day, every single person either goes to work or they go to school. Our students work on campus, they work off campus. Anywhere on campus, if you visited, that you would see an employee. We have students working. So again, our equestrian program, that's one of the really popular jobs on campus. Beauty shop is as well. We even have, I have several students that work with me in administrative offices. So we just have a number of students. We have a vocational training program. If our students really want to, that's their main objective. They really want to be working. But I can tell you that there's a number of our students, really regardless of age, that want to be going to school. So many of our students love going to school and learning. And we found that, particularly with our boys, but men and women as well, their brains just aren't fully myelinized, so they really do. Our students, we all do have the capacity to learn much beyond 21 or 18 when they graduate from high school. So that's pretty important. And we see that. In fact, I was just talking to a mother last week. Her daughter just turned 30. And I am just amazed at the progress that she continues to make. The new words that she's saying at 30 years old. It's still happening. That we've just been so impressed by. And I think that's in part due to the constant education, the classes. When a student enrolls with us, we sit down with them and talk about exactly what classes they'd like to take. If they want a curriculum that you would think of as more similar to a school, that may be reading, math, science, social studies, or if they want to do handbells, choir, yoga. We have a kind of a cooking class, if you will. It's called Dinner in the Movie. Just a whole host of art therapy programs as well. That some of our students are a little more focused on. Our students love those activities. We do a really great job of offering consistency. It's one of the things that we do as structure. One of the things that we do that's nearly impossible to be put in place in the outside world. It's just so hard. And for so many of our students, that schedule and that consistency every single day of the week is really important. So 7 days a week, our students get up at the same time. They have lunch at the same time. They have dinner at the same time. Because, that idea of really knowing what's coming next and being aware, I think enables our students to feel a sense of control, if you will. So we get up every morning at about 6 or 6:30. Our students have breakfast together, and then we go to classes or work. Our students that go to classes, they have 4 classes. They're 45-minute classes. And then we go to lunch. Students eat on their buildings. They have family-style dining on their buildings. And then they go back to class, and they have 3 classes. And then they have what we call kind of a correspondence class. And that shows you a little bit about the age of the school. Because that term correspondent was originally before, we could just call or Skype. So that was when, students would be writing to their families. So we just continue, that's what that teacher is still called. It's what you would think of as a homeroom teacher, maybe a case manager. That's the person that families really form such a close bond with and will talk to and, want to share every single little thing about what when he or she's sick, this is usually what happens, this is how I see that, just all those sort of little details. But the correspondent will Skype, will call, will sign that student up for activities, for Special Olympics, for any number of activities. And then at 4:30, our students go back to dinner, and they have dinner until 6. And then we have our evening activities, recreation, from 6 to 7:30. And then at 7:30, our students go back to the building and get ready for bed and go to bed about 9 or 10 o'clock. So, if you come to campus, again, we're on the front 75 to 80 acres. It requires a lot of physical activity from our students. I mean, it really does. Our students are, I know a lot of families will say, oh, my son or daughter is not going to go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. That's not going to happen. And good luck getting up at 6 or 6:30. No. But when all the other students are really doing it, and just within a day or two, it happens pretty quickly. It's that peer pressure, I think a lot of it is. And so also the physical activity it can be exhausting, and that constant engagement in classrooms. So by 9 or 10 o'clock, our students, and some of them much earlier, are exhausted and are ready to go to bed. I think that's really, we feel pretty proud that our students look physically so good. When you hear, I know I was talking to HDI about this, when you look at, they've done statistics on people with intellectual disabilities in the community in Kentucky, and how many of them are obese. We feel good that our numbers are so much lower because of how big our campus is, and our students are just constantly moving, constantly busy. Another thing we really pride ourselves on is, and we listen to our students constantly, and this is the number of activities that we offer. We try to do just about everything that you or I would want to do. We have a great relationship with the movie theater. Frankfurt Movie Theater actually just lets us rent out the movie theater. Really depending on how often we went to see Despicable Me 2. How often a movie comes out that we want to see. And then there's a movie theater in downtown Frankfurt that's much smaller, the Grand.
Yeah.
And they let our student government select what movie we want to show. So we're going to see sometimes Ghostbusters in, May. Doesn't need to be October around Halloween for us to go see Ghostbusters. And so we'll go down there. But we really try to do all those sorts of activities. During the summer, we're going to the Cincinnati Reds, Lexington Legends, the Louisville. We're going to Kings Island, water park. You name it. We're trying to, do all those sorts of activities because our students just love them.
Do they get to opt in or out? Or do they
It's their choice.
Okay.
And there are some students that if there's a bus loading up, they better be on the bus. They're going. If there are others, they are just much happier staying on campus. It's really dependent on that unique student. And we know it. We know when there's a student around and if they're acting up, they want to be on that trip.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be, playing basketball or whatever. So we got to get them there. So we're listening to them. I know when we had this at the exact same time that the president, was running and we had elections, we had our mayor on campus running, and we have a mayor, but our mayor just runs 1-year terms, and so we can't have a back-to-back mayor as well. But we have had one person that's been mayor for eight terms, not back-to-back, but over a period of 16 years, we're like, oh my goodness. So, and we just had a prom last week, and he is an active mayor because he extended prom by half an hour. He wanted prom a half an hour longer. So it's supposed to go from 5:30 to 7:30, went from 5:30 to 8. So the students were just dancing. That's a long day, and having a 2.5-hour prom, they were about to drop. But for example, we had our mayor, there's the race, and during the speeches, when the candidates were giving their speeches, they'll list off, we want to go to Kings Island instead of Kentucky Kingdom. We want to do this instead of this. We want, all these different activities. Perhaps it's new food choice they want to offer, things like that. And so we listen to those ideas, as best we can. one of them said, we want a book club, and so I got to start a book club. I thought that was a pretty good idea, so we started a book club. We just finished Charlotte's Web. So we've got to choose our next book club. But you know, we try to really listen to our students and listen to their families. We have families that come and visit, and what we tell them is we just want to make sure that we can meet the students' needs and that we can really meet the parents' expectations, that we can do those two things. So it's really an ongoing conversation. You know, we clearly, based on our age range, have students that have been with us a very long time. We have students that have been at Stewart Home for, 60, 65 years. But we also have students that will come to us for a year. We just had, we had one student come to us for 2 weeks, and she tried it out, and then she'll come back to us after she graduates high school next fall. Then we have other students that will just come to us every year for the summer because it's sort of like a camp. That's how they'll see it, which in the summer it really is because there's so many activities going on. So it's dependent on the student. You know, a lot of people ask us what's your average length of stay. That's a very hard question to answer. We really don't know the answer to that. It's just so dependent on what the student needs. For some students, they will come to us as sort of a way for the parents to discern if they're ready to live on their own. We have such a spectrum in that regards. We have students that need, such physical care and such kind of, just guidance and prompting that they may need to be right next to the house parent in the building, right next door. We have other students that, maybe at the end of the hallway, if they can have a little bit more independence. And then we have what we call self-care. And that's where the students live on either a different hallway, and it's dependent on the building. Some buildings, it's actually a different floor. And there's not a house parent there nobody does their laundry, they do their own laundry. There's somebody prompting them, you haven't taken a shower today, you've got to take a shower. So it's really, it's pretty independent. And so some families really use that as a way to determine if their son or daughter or their family member could live on their own. And we'll guide them and let them know that. And we have some students that are doing that now that have gone into, a lot of these new, I think Kentucky, this is just kind of getting there. But in several other states have already started this higher education programs where there are programs in universities that students can attend. So we have some students that have gone to those. But we have other students that really need a lot more oversight. Our house parent in our building, it's a little different than other schools that you would see. And our house parent lives there like the student. So just like it's a student's home, it's the house parent's home as well. There's not, in some places you see like 8-hour shifts, but the house parent actually lives there and then takes a period of time off, and there's a substitute that comes on the building and is trained for that building. That way it feels like home for our students. So,
How many different buildings are there? And each building has its own house.
yes. I'll have to count. Give me a second.
That's all right. So what?
10 girls' buildings, I think. So, and then,
That's a lot.
yeah, just probably about that, maybe 9 boys. So, don't quote me on those numbers on it. Yeah, so not every single one, but most of them have self-care. So either, like I said, it's for some of them, and we think about that too. If the student's coming to us and we very rarely immediately put a student on self-care. Usually that's something that students work for and really petition for in our office saying, I want to be on self-care. Then we may move them to a building where it's a wing, not a separate floor. Just wanting to make sure they have that little extra bit of oversight. Well, initially. And then they can move to a separate floor, once we really knew they were, going to continue shaving and showering and doing all those sorts of things. So that's ongoing, but, I think that's something that makes us a little bit different, and that our house parents live there. And we try our very best to just constantly remember, it's our students' home. So every single day, if you go onto a student's building, we just constantly remind ourselves that we're walking in their home. And that's a privilege. We have students with, so many different diagnoses. Just every single diagnosis that you could name, no matter how rare. We have, of course, Down syndrome, autism, Asperger's, Fragile X, Prader-Willi syndrome. And our students, some are, as I've described with residential, some are very independent, and some require a lot more, care and kind of assistance, and they may maybe walk to classes, they may be nonverbal, we may communicate with them in other ways. So there's just quite a range there in capability. And we see that because of that, our students really thrive. Our students that are a little more capable, if you will, really see themselves wanting to reach out to the other students and learning from the other students. And they form an amazing relationship. It's always so funny to us because a new student will enroll. And we'll kind of think, okay, we think this person may be his or her boyfriend or girlfriend. We think this person may be best friend. We are almost always wrong. We just are. Our students show us, it's just amazing the kind of, the friendships that form, and who our students really, really bond with, and who they spend their time with. And that recreational period that I told you about from 6 to 7:30, that's where the students really just get to socialize and spend time together. There's like dances and watermelon parties and movie popcorn night and different activities we can go, different activities that happen. But for a lot of the students, they just want to hang out with their friends during that time. It's dependent on the student. And the weekends are the same way. The weekends, we have the exact same time. The times do not change, but it's recreational activities instead of classes. Some of our students still work on the weekends. It's just dependent on that person's job. So, do you all want to, I'll keep talking forever. Do you all want to ask me some questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
So you, the men and women are separate. And there are no places for people to live together. It's just something I'm thinking about as they get older.
No.
Okay.
We don't have any students that have been sexually active because we don't think that it's fair to the student. To let them be on campus and to say, we can't have these, you can't be sexually active on campus, but you may have been sexually active before. So we think it's just, that we don't think it's fair to the students.
So when they come to you, that's part of what you...
It is. It's part of the application process.
It's just something that I'm starting to think about as my children get older. Mm-hmm. And as I've recently heard of something that made me think about it even further, is that recently I've heard of a retirement home that it's somewhere here in the States. It's going against doctrine, and it is encouraging sexual activity among patients, even those who are becoming senile or have Alzheimer's. And they make a lot of good arguments for it, and I know that, we've not gotten there yet, of course, but I know I've heard in the past discussion about how that's mentally healthful, that's sort of that aspect of life. And some people, because of disability, they don't have access to anyone who would want them or anything like that. And so they try. There are some areas where people try to help them in that way. It's just something I'm thinking about. you know, it's some, you're
It's-
lonely if you, and
Yes.
and it's not necessarily sexuality, but that's going to come too, you know, it's really part of it.
I think, I will say I feel very confident that our students are not lonely.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, you may not have a population.
Well, I will say for us, the reason that we have that rule is just because you get into the issue of consent, you know, if a person can give consent. So
Yes, yes.
now I will tell you that we've had a number of students that have left us that I know they have, decided afterwards to get married. And that, and especially as they age and they get older, they've decided, and their parents, have decided that that's something they absolutely want to do. But none of our students on campus do that. So
I don't know how you would make it happen. I'm not even suggesting that you even
Yeah.
try. It was just a curiosity question. I mean, I don't know how you would be able to at all.
our students, because of their intellectual disabilities, some are receptively able to, know so much more than they're able to express, and others can express much more than they really understand. So you get into, it's just so tricky for us with the issue of consent. It really is. It really is. I mean, we have some students that, that you would see and you would from a physicality standpoint think, absolutely they could live on self-care and they could do these sorts of things, but that's just not the case.
Yeah.
That's not to say we don't want to work with our students to get there. There's no question we do. But we do, we want to protect our students as much as possible as well. It's really important to us. That, that's an ongoing conversation that we have because of the internet now. It really is, and kind of what that introduces. We know that our students are so, and I absolutely adore this about our students, are so trusting. Anyone that they talk to on the internet, our students will absolutely trust. And it's such a wonderful quality that I really envy our students. But when it comes to the internet, to say that it doesn't concern me would be a lie. It does. So that's kind of an ongoing, thing that we're just watching and but our students are on the internet and they're shopping and they're ordering things and they're just on Facebook. So.
But you say that you do see boyfriend and girlfriend relationships develop.
Oh my goodness, yes. Oh, there's no question. We have boyfriend-girlfriend relationships and we'll say, how long have you been dating? We've been dating 22 years. Well, and they have.
Yeah.
That is yes, we do. There's no question. And I can tell you, our students are so different in, their capabilities and their ages and where they're from, but what they have in common is their families. Their families are just, have been the advocates, have, tried to start a school of their own and have done all these things. And I'm not kidding. We have several families who they've tried to start a school of their own and just realized they couldn't put it in place in time for their son or daughter. The schools are still, most of them going, but just not to the level they would need for their student or at the age that they would need. So our families are all, they have that commonality. And you'll often see our families, there's no contract for any like this day. So even though we have families that have, students that have been there for so long, it's month by month. We don't ask families to sign any contract. We're entirely private. We want to be sure that that our families are happy with us, and that's keeping us in business. So, but with that being said, our families we have a family weekend every night, and that's their chance to get to see each other and meet their daughter's boyfriend and his parents, and all those. That opportunity and best friends and get to know them and go out to dinner and so.
Well, I guess the obvious question, which we could talk about later, if it's kind of more individualized, is just funding and support at the state and federal level.
We're entirely private, so we don't take any state or federal funding. And our tuition is the same for every single student. It's $2,835. A month, and includes room and board. We tell families that they can estimate about, this is an average, about $300 in addition a month for, a haircut and beauty shop, going out to dinner, shopping, just going to a movie, those sorts of things. There are students that spend far below that $300, and there are students that spend far beyond it.
Yeah. So you're saying that $2,800 a month, and really there's no way to follow any sort of public assistance?
There's not. The only thing is Social Security or SSDI. So, and that's usually nowhere near that amount, but that's the only thing that our families do. What they typically do is they create a separate account for that, for their for the student's Social Security income, and they'll just, advise us to deduct a certain amount from that account, and then they'll pay it over to it. So, no, we don't receive any federal funding.
And like you said, that, well, like in the case of our kid who's got the autism with the diabetes as well, it's just a flat rate for every student?
Every student.
Okay. And has that been fairly stable, or is it, tuition seems to be going up everywhere else?
To give you an idea, it's $2,035 this year, last year, and the year before it did not change, but last year was $2,750. So about an $85 increase.
And that does include their transportation to jobs, and their job, does it include job shadowing and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we have somebody on campus that, and not all of our students work. I mean, some of them really want to be in classes, and but some of them work on campus, and then some work off campus, and we have somebody that works with our students, and that begins with resume, or even actually begins before that, begins in the classroom when we're discerning what that student would really want to do. Having that conversation, really practicing those skills on campus. We'll have our students really involved to kind of discern what we think will be the best fit, and then go into, all of the places. We have students that work at the hospital, nursing homes, activity centers, restaurants, you name it. We've trying our hardest to get students there. I will be honest with you, we've seen, as a result of the economy, our students are the very first ones hit. And it's terrible to see. And it's heartbreaking for our students because, one of our students works at Dairy Queen and is the trainer for all their new employees. Because so many of our students, if, they learn a pattern, they will absolutely follow it. Whereas every other employee that comes into Dairy Queen is not going to make the blizzard the exact way. He is invaluable. He's worked there the longest. And that's including the manager. So he trains all their employees. We have a number of students our students absolutely have those talents. I mean, so many of them were just amazed. So, but that's been difficult in the economy, so.
And you had mentioned, as far as funding, that whatever the Social Security is could be applied, but that doesn't usually kick in until a kid's 18, right?
So, yeah. So, I would say our youngest is 15. And I don't know why, but just recently we enrolled 3 17-year-olds. I have no idea what it was about that age, but we did. And they came to us for different reasons. We'll just give you an example. One, she was getting, and her psychiatrist really helped her mother work through this. She was getting too attached to her mother, to a point that her mom said, this just isn't healthy for her. So she's got to, and now, she's been with us for about 6 weeks, and her mom's come down to visit 2 or 3 times, and she's so sweet. Her mom said, we got to go home for a doctor's appointment. Her mom was telling us, I am so nervous about taking her home that she's going to fall back into that routine. And when she took her, she said, I will be back by 6 o'clock. I have activities to come back. And our parents were like, okay, you're going to come back for him. So, but that's our students are so conscientious to that. I mean, they just are. It is amazing. I had book club a few weeks ago, and I just almost started crying in book club. It was the sweetest thing because we were sitting there in book club. There was a terrible, this was not, the weather's been so great, there had been a terrible downpour and storm that had just kind of hit all at once. You know, we were getting all the rain, this was a few weeks ago, and there had been a terrible downpour all of a sudden, and so, you know, there'd come an announcement just to keep everybody in the classroom, all the students in the classes, and don't let them change classes until the storm stopped. We didn't want our students going out, you know, because we're constantly putting hoods up. So many of our students, I'm like, put that hood up over your head. I don't want you getting cut, you know, just drenched. So we held the classes back because some of them will, you know, go to different buildings and will be out, have to walk outside. And so our book club got moved back from Wednesday to Thursday. Well, on Thursday, several students walked in and they were furious that we had not made an announcement that book club had been changed. We'd made an announcement on Wednesday, but not again on Thursday. We'd not sent an email, and they just listed to me all these things I did not do, and they needed to know it was book club. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I forgot how. I mean, it was just incredibly serious, you know. And they just were. They said, "Are you going to talk to somebody about this?" And I'd upset their apple cart, you know. First of all, by moving it from Wednesday to Thursday, really, I had caused the whole problem by moving it. So that was a lesson for me. But it was, I mean, it was, you know, it's just wonderful to work with our students every single day. We just learn so much from our students, you know, so.
Remind us what states, how many states?
It's 39 states. It's in 39 states, and honestly, what we'll typically see is students, you know, we'll get one student from a city, and then sure enough, in the next few years, we'll get more and more students because it's the families. It's that word of mouth more than anything else. And you know, I have families calling us that will say, if she thought you were okay and chose you, then I have got to see you. Because I know what she's like, you know, that referring to that mother. And it's just the cutest thing in the world, you know, you just think, oh my goodness. So that's what we typically see, you know, we'll just kind of see these little areas. We've got several families from Alaska. People say, how did you get them? No clue, but again, they're all friends, those families. So it's because, like I was saying, those families are advocates, you know, and then 9 foreign countries. 9 foreign countries. It rotates between 8 and 9, but 9. So it's just dependent on whatever student. We have some students that'll go home for the summer, so we always try to quote on that specific time.
Yeah.
And today, I think it's 9. So we have students that will go home for the summer and want to spend, like we have one student, we attended the National Down Syndrome Congress Convention in Denver, and we have one student that goes home and he works in Denver during the summer and then comes back to us during the school year. So.
And I think you had said that there weren't many from Kentucky.
10%.
That's huge.
But
I'm curious, I mean, with autism, quite often you get a lot of behavioral issues. You know, some days are better than others. But a lot of the students you've been describing are pretty capable and self-sufficient. But I guess what's your capacity for dealing with kids who have good days and bad days?
you know, absolutely. I think what we do have a number of students with autism diagnoses and Asperger's, and if you came to campus, you would see we have students that are very capable, and we have students that need, are not toilet trained and, can't verbally communicate. So we just have such a range in that respect. We do have students that have come to us with, some behavior problems. I think our number one concern is we just would want to be sure that they would never hurt themselves or hurt any of the other students. Safety is our number one priority at all times. It just is. And so if their behavior is such that we really feel confident that we can work with them, then, we have worked with several in the area, behavioral specialists, therapists and interventionists that have worked with us, what we have found is we really want to, we call it like the Las Vegas desert approach. You know, when a student is doing exactly what we want, is going to class and is arriving on time, then we want to, just give that student as much attention and praise as we possibly can. And when they're not, we don't want to ignore the student. I think that's what a lot of people get into doing. That we've seen that I've seen or kind of heard of people doing, we want to ignore the behavior. And that's really what we try to do. Because of our schedule and the consistency it provides, we frankly see a lot of behaviors that just disappear in time because they know what to expect, they know what's coming next. And even those trips, those things that may not be as consistent, they know ahead of time. Some of our students walk around with visual schedules, some walk around with calendars, so they know exactly what's coming next. That helps with more behaviors than anything else, honestly. We are blessed to have so many students that we can work with things like, sensory perception issues. If there are things like that, and there might be a student that's just loud and that bothers another student, because we see that. We have students that are just loud and someone else hates it. So our number one priority, we want to work with the students. We want the students to really learn how to handle that diseases. That is the real world, So we try to really work with that student and say, okay, today you need to listen to that music that student chooses for 10 minutes. And then we'll listen to your music for 10 minutes. Just working with the student. Because it's important. We are in the community all the time, so we want our students to be able to handle that and to be able to transition well into that. So, but if we felt that the student's behavior wouldn't hurt them and wouldn't hurt any of the other students, then we feel pretty confident. There's another thing that we kind of would consider a deal breaker is if the student was what you probably know as a runner. We have such a big campus, it would not be safe. It just wouldn't. So we wouldn't be the right place either.
I'm wondering if technology will eventually help with that, or the devices that they'll keep on, or do you ever even consider that as a possibility if someone has one that will keep on a monitoring device?
Yeah, we've talked about that in the past, and the thing that concerns us is just being able to get staff to the person quick enough. We've got 3 ponds on our campus because our students are going fishing. We've just got areas, of our campus. It's Kentucky, there's rolling hills. We worry about if the student, fell, something like that. So it's not to say we wouldn't discuss it, but we've got to, our priority is to keep every single student safe. So we want to be sure that we do that.
That was funny. Probably over a year ago, we had the police kind of talked about tracking devices. And they said they're still using the technology from the 60s and 70s because it's reliable. Just a little emitter and then a couple guys with a radio dish. And all the GPS stuff sounds great, but it's just not reliable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's the issue. A lot of our kids, the parents will say, you can try that, but that will never stay on. They'll have that on.
That is also what we've talked about. With our students that we've known that really needed that, there'd be no way in the world they'd keep it on,
Yeah. The irony is, the ones who need it most likely to keep it on.
I'm a bit curious. Our kid's not on the SC waiver, but I know some families are, and it's a nice funding source.
It absolutely.
I guess why is it something that you all are not tapping into?
We had really decided that we wanted our students and our parents and the Stewart family to kind of be able to really dictate and direct us. And we felt like if we accepted funding, that would be compromised in a way.
Well, now, that would be something that the family could get and use to pay, wouldn't it?
I'll tell you, in the state of Kentucky, we've only ever had one student come to us where they were receiving state funding.
It's still relatively new.
We have a number of students, I don't know, don't ask me why, that come to us from the Northeast that do, it's sort of like a voucher system. And I'll be quite honest with you, those school districts will oftentimes visit us. And what it comes down to is dollars. And they'll just look at, are you cheaper than, I think we have to, in their mind, a year has to be half the cost of what they would pay for that student. Typically, we're cheaper than transportation, alone, because and of course it depends on where in the country, but it can be so expensive.
I know with our kid, when you got special transportation, your educator, and right there, that's,
Right.
and benefits.
Yes. So that's what we have students from like the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area that have come to us on what you would think of as a voucher. We are never the payee. So a lot of times when families will say, well, what states? We don't really even know that unless the family shares it with us, because we only want to receive money from the parents. So we just learned about a month ago that we had a family from Ohio that was getting state funding. And this young man is well past, he's in his late 20s, and he still receives a piece of that from the state. So, it wasn't just during school age that he received it. It could be that we have students from more states that we just are not aware that are receiving some sort of assistance. We encourage families to ask about that. But in the state of Kentucky, I can't say that I'm confident right now that it would happen. It just comes down to, we really want our parents and our students to be able to kind of dictate the services that we offer. So that's why we decided to make that choice.
Yeah, in Kentucky, you got the consumer directed option within a waiver, which gives you access to money, but anybody to pay it to has to be the accredited provider.
Yes.
And therefore follow the guidelines of being accredited.
But I encourage you to try it. We have some families that will try us out for, and I think it's probably different depending on the state, maybe 60, 90 days, so that they don't lose the waiver, so they can see whether or not it would work. I mean, we would hate for families to make this decision and, things not work out, or they're upset about it, or just not be happy, and they have lost that funding. So some families will try us out first before they lose it. Because we know that waiting list can be incredible. Getting that funding again can be very difficult. Just not as easy to go right back to it. So,
Speaking of consistency, talk about how there's still a Stewart, right?
yeah, we're our fourth, fifth, and sixth generations. So, Dr. Johnny Stewart, fifth generation, is actually a surgeon here in Lexington. And he comes and sees our students every Monday night. Both he and his father oversee a nurse practitioner. He sees our students 5 days a week on campus, and they have 5 nurses below them. That's incredibly helpful for our students that have had the hardest time getting to the doctor in the past. And we have some students that are just terrified of going to the doctor, or getting them out of their routine to go to the doctor. But because it's right on campus, it's much easier. So that's on campus. We have that. We have our director has been with us for 43 years. So, and then my father works at the school, and he's been there for 39. So I grew up on campus. My parents both worked there. They were co-principals at that time of the school program, and they grew up. They met there. They were both working there. They dated, got married, and then 5 years later they had me. And then 5 years later my mother passed away. So because of that, I've been there more. My father's in charge of the recreational activities, so that means I was at every single dance. and my husband jokes, will listen to music now, and he'll just say, you only know like the 60s, 70s decades. And I'm like, well, that's our students' favorite, so that's why. I mean, it's just, you can just tell what I was growing up with, because it's like, did you never hear the 80s when you were younger? And I'm like, well, our students just love the 60s and 70s, I guess, I don't know. It's just been a huge blessing to me, because, first of all, our students just have the best memories, the best, and can just walk up to me and just tell me, things my mother said about me, and it's just a really wonderful thing. So that's been great.
So you grew up there? You actually grew up there?
We live about 2 miles from campus. At one point in the school's history, everybody that worked there did live there. But that's no longer the case, A number still do. I mean, we have our housemates that work on staff, and then we have a number of other employees that do live on or right around campus. It's been on the students, or just on myself.
It's really neat. I couldn't believe how big it was. I couldn't believe you guys never, you usually just operated in word of mouth for families and didn't need to or really want to broadcast it.
We really struggled with that. It's a hard decision for us, and it's one we continually talk about, because it's just, there's such a beautiful thing to be said for families with one another. Our families love to talk and ask each other questions, even more so than do us. They just feel a little more comfortable when you know exactly what it's like to be able to ask one another questions. You share that common bond, you have that commonality. So it's different for us now, but we just feel like we'd be doing a disservice to any prospective students in a way if we didn't, in this 21st century, kind of begin to, really move forward with of course we have had a website, but really move forward with that and try to do that a little bit more. But it's a struggle for us, because it's just so wonderful to have families be at primary schools.
And did you feel like it was more protective? Was that part of the thought process, and not going outside of the families and talking around it? Did you feel like it would draw people?
No, I think that's okay for us. We're not, because honestly, I think one of the things that we see now, we get more calls from our students that may not be exactly appropriate for us as a result, because with families with learning, you have a little bit more of a filter there. They know what's more appropriate. Other families may have that specific child in mind, but now we get more and more calls that we think, other programs or schools may be better options, and we'll refer families there.
Do you have a relationship to other institutions?
We're part of NAPSEC, and NAPSEC stands for the National Association of Private Special Education Centers. So the problem is there's just not a lot in our area. There's not. In the southeast, really, there's not a lot. There's one in Tennessee, there's one in Florida, there's several. One in Georgia, but they're looking at it again. NAPSEC has it, and they've got an entire, it's a great directory on their website. So they do include some centers that wouldn't necessarily be.
Thanks.
I think she had her takers tonight, so sometimes she'll have 5 or 6.
Yes. No, you're fine.
So not that many around. But I'm sure that everybody knows who everyone is, so you know what other institutions are out there.
We know what they have to offer. We
Yeah.
know.
And they probably refer you.
If there's a student that we think may hurt themselves, or if there's a student that we think may, run off campus, then we would say, we think this school is just a little more secure, if you will, than we are. We're not. We just are not that place. We're very, open. We have horse dolphins that run our campus, so.
Yeah, good for horses.
Yes. But, we really want our students to want to be at our school. That's really important. So that's another piece of it. When families come to visit us, we want to see that the parents, the siblings, whoever it may be, they really think that we're in a appropriate fit and that the student wants to be there. And so generally, once a student gets into that schedule and that structure, there's never a question the student would dare, in any way vary from that schedule. It's just not going to happen. I mean, our students are just right on time, 5 minutes early. So just very aware of that.
Yeah, so basically, private programs with special ed services, English is the only one in Kentucky right now? You said that they were fairly uncommon as far as...
They are, entirely private, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Like ours.
And mostly, when you have parents who come to you who you need to refer elsewhere, you feel like they're mostly looking for private?
Some families do are very aware that we're private and really are interested in us for that very reason. Other families, it's just, they want, honestly, the majority of families just want their son or daughter to be the happiest they can be. My mother sat down with me and, we have that conversation of, exactly what are you interested in, what are you looking for, what are your expectations, and she said, I want her to be as happy as she possibly can be every single day of her life. And that's what our families want. What family doesn't want that, but our families just, so desperately want that. So they're really directing us, and you go swimming during the summer for 3 times. Can't you do that in the fall? Or can't you do that, in the winter? Can't you, so we're just constantly being directed as to, which things are going to make their student the happiest. Stewart Home is very different for every single student. It really is. And we, families will say, they'll ask us, we have worked with behavioral specialists, but they'll say, do you have anybody on staff? And we don't, because we want to kind of really learn from our students, and we notice that quite honestly most behaviors fall away. There are some behaviors that we really work with. And I'll say, in a lot of ways, we let our students kind of guide us. So, of course, their safety is always most important. We have to be sure that's kept in mind. But we're absolutely not right for every single student. So,
Did you come from Frankfurt tonight? You lived there.
I was there. I just live a couple miles from campus.
Yeah, still.
I still do.
It's a great area.
Yeah, it's a nice.
Yeah.
We're having our 120th celebration is in September, so we're having a big trying to thank Frankfurt and having everything.
So what did they do for including the city of Frankfurt in that?
We're inviting them all. That is specifically for Frankfurt.
Okay.
So we have been addressing invitations for weeks now. But yes, so we've invited, hopefully, every last person we can think of, to it, because like I said, they've just been so wonderful to it. So our family weekend in May is, we of course celebrated 120 years then, but that's really with our families. The families come in, they'll all come in for the week, and but this is very specifically focused on Frankfurt. And each of the Lexington, there's a number of, physicians that are students here and professionals in Lexington that'll be coming as well.
State government?
Yeah.
Funded or?
Yeah, we actually, we work really, really well with them and have, so, we welcome them to our campus anytime, so absolutely.
For the state.
They've been so great to us. We try to be our first one. We have Andy Barr in Ballfield. So we actually have a student that interns for me
Gosh.
in the Lexington and Hamburg office that he has.
Huh.
Yeah, so he'll be coming, and we tried, I don't know if we'll get to that now.
You should be there. Gosh. He's so much been there, 120 years. I mean, how many industries staying in the same town? You know, businesses.
Definitely contributed to the economy of Frankfurt.
Uh-huh.
Oh, there's no question, because there is just no question, because when our families, I mean, you know our families come in, and we have some families that, we have a family that's close by, and there's several of them, they come and see their son or daughter every single weekend. We have a family that's just bought a big 20-acre farm, and so, you know, they'll come and pick her up every Friday, drop her off every Sunday, you know. So we have other students that do that too. But regardless, I mean, even our families are far away. When they come in, you know, if they don't come in, but you know, a few times a year, then you know, you better believe they're redoing the room, and you know, because it's college, it's like a dorm room. I mean, you know, you get to pick the color of the paint on the walls, you get to decorate it. And we learn a lot about our students through exactly how they decorate their room. And our students teach us. I'll walk in and say, "Who is this?" A few months ago, I was like, "Who is One Direction?" I mean, I was in several girls' room, and you know, they were like, you know, you don't know One
I know
Direction.
a lot about One Direction.
I don't.
Well, listen, now mind you, they all look the same to me. Every single boy in that group.
Every song kind of sounds the same.
But oh my goodness, now I know One Direction is.
Yeah. It's a British group.
It is, and you can tell. The second I saw the posters, I was asking British. Is it British? Yes. Very popular.
Yeah. My son with autism, yeah. I mean, it's every day. He's trying to fix his hair.
Oh,
Yes.
Love all about
Yeah.
it.
Every time he goes to the bathroom, his hair comes out wet because he's trying to adjust his bangs. Just the same way.
That's so
Okay,
sweet.
again.
Which one do you look like?
I think it's hairy.
Here.
Yes.
Did they all have dark hair? Is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think.
I think I've seen some.
Yeah. There's three in the lead. That's the only two. Yeah.
But
Cool.
yeah, so
Yeah, but I'm starting to feel mad at the fancy projects. I really think it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal.
we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, maybe so, maybe so.
Mayor of Frankfurt comes. I will have a,
Sure.
you know, I could have a
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's just such a good deal, 120 years. And you're doing it what month, in August?
September. September 3rd, the day after Labor Day, we're gonna have our
Oh,
celebration.
gosh, right after Labor Day.
The day after.
Oh.
Hopefully that works for the calendar. Yes, on that Tuesday. We'll have our students kind of, you know, they'll just play a big performance. So,
Yeah.
and we have some incredibly talented students. We have one student, Nils Williamson, and she can sing in 33 different languages. So, we have so many, all of our students, every single one of them, regardless of, you know, capability, we just want them to be showcased.
Yeah.
And so that's what we try to do. We do our big play that we do.
I was going to ask you about your drama there.
Oh, yes, we do. We do plays. Of course we do. So we do, I mean, even for, we have monthly assemblies, and even for monthly assemblies, our, you know, different classes will kind of do little skits. For 4th of July, a group of our students did a little skit about 4th of July and Independence Day, and that was for, so.
You said the different classes, do you try to congregate them by age or ability or
We
disability?
use a wide range achievement test, and we of course look at, you know, IEPs and things like that when making that decision. But we have 22 classes, and that's a huge benefit because, again, it's back to if there's a conflict between two students, or if there's, that sensory, if a student wouldn't, we don't think would be right, then because there's so many, that student could possibly move up, move down in the class. But we test them when they come in, and then we test them annually to try to get, the students to.
Being a private institution, are you really obligated to stay in line with the Kentucky core content or do the Kentucky assessments, or are you pretty much operating independent of that?
No, we do look towards those things, absolutely. There's no set requirements for us or anything of that sort. So, which can be good, and I would say our teachers really, I think at times appreciate it because the curriculum can be such that it can be very themed. During the summer, it's themed. I'll tell you, our students, they go to class year round. We have 3 semesters. One of them begins the day after Labor Day and goes through December. The other starts in January and goes through Memorial Day, and then Memorial Day to Labor Day is our summer semester. So typically during the summer semester, because so many students are going on trips and are, just going swimming or tennis or golfing all day long because the weather's so great, they would have, kind of a more focus. A lot of them this summer are teaching about history and about Stewart Home's history, and just kind of a really themed curriculum during the summer, which they enjoy.
Are your teachers required to have degrees in education?
Some of them do, not all of them do. So we try to get as many of them to have special education as possible.
What about if they have like masters or doctorate in their field?
Yeah, a number of them do. And we constantly are encouraging our teachers and our employees to continue that, whether that be through kind of going back to school or, ongoing trainings, whatever that may be. I'm working on my doctorate right now. I know a bunch of our, and it's just not my things. But a number of our employees are.
So, since they're at varying ages, they're not required, I assume, courses. So do they just get to choose from a menu?
All of our students can choose what classes they want to take. All of our students.
And sometimes they choose challenges.
Well, we work with the students, we work with the parents.
Yeah.
Some of our students, some students may be much better at reading than at math or vice versa. And so they may be in 2 math classes and not in a reading class. And so we have that flexibility. And then there are other families and students come into us and just say, listen, he just graduated from high school. If he wants to do yoga and a equestrian program all day long, let him do it. But our science room is pretty popular because that's where we have a couple of our therapy dogs. We have 2 therapy dogs, and in the science room we have an animal also.
They were there.
Yes, so science seems to be a popular class because of those dogs. But not all of our students like dogs, so they may stay away from that class as a result. Or we can kind of work with them with the dogs if there's a student that's particularly scared.
Do you have any students that have service animals?
We don't have any students of service animals on campus. We've never been asked that question. We did have recently a student they had a service dog at home, and the family wanted to keep it, but they would bring the dog, and his name was Moses. Oh my goodness, Moses would step foot on campus, and the entire campus, he would come time to time. He just didn't live on campus with us. We've had other students that have, had cats at home, they were relocating. We've had 2 different families that have contacted us and said, listen, we have 3 cats, we're relocating, please. And with the idea that they would be barn cats. Well, there's really no such thing as barn cats. You would think so, but in reality, their feet never hit the ground, they just, and I was talking to one of the fathers last week, and he said, I saw Arthur recently, and he does not look like the same cat that we dropped off to you, because this cat is huge now. You know, I mean, it's just really impossible to keep our students from feeding him all day long. And that's how all the cats are there on campus. So the cats are in specific rooms because there are so many students with allergies, I mean, you know, cats. But they lived a lot.
How do you keep other cats from just wandering on and just?
We have that problem from time to time, you know, because they're so big. But we've got some amazing employees on our grounds department, things like that, that work. I mean, it's amazing the calls that they get out of.
Thanks so much. Got to go run, pick up my special Olympic.
You
The
know,
softball players.
we have softball practice tonight too. We see softball.
Softball.
So does he go to those weekly,
On Wednesday.
Wednesday night
Yeah.
games?
In fact, I think we're
which
playing
there's been
on
hardly
this
any
weekend.
this year,
Now we've got rain out.
rain or heat.
Oh, they call it for heat.
They called it for heat one week, and then before that it was rain every week.
Yeah, that was like.
Our students do not, I mean, that's just, they know they have games on Wednesday nights and they know they're gonna be up late, you know, because we don't get home until late on Wednesday nights. And, oh my goodness, that weather, those are not fun nights, it's just so hard. Well, I hope you did well.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
I think I'm good. Anything more?
I might just ask you some online questions when
Yeah, of course.
we're done as a group.
Tuition was one question that that lady had, who's she had.
I'll call her, or you can share that, I mean, we absolutely.
Sorry. I
It's the
told
same
her,
for all
I
our
told her this
students.
would be up, yeah. I told her this would be up on YouTube, and so she'll probably look for that, but also, just touch base with her. But like I say, did you hear, were you here when the lady was here who left her contact information for her
I saw
grandson?
her.
Do you remember what age she said he's young, and so it's not something that's imminent, so, and she doesn't know if it's something they would consider anyway, so.
Some people really come to us, and I think I describe it as a trial, you know, just for a week or two to see if the student, you know, likes it or would be interested in.
So you guys are open to that short of a trial period, even though you know that.
The only thing that ever worries me is if a student is, you know, where this structure and the schedule is so important and that consistency, we just could not guarantee that if the student came back, they would have the same room. And I worry about that. That can be pretty important for some students. So that's the only piece that would concern me.
So you guys really try to, I know you said you sometimes try to get someone to train someone with exposure to sensory issues, but you really try to keep the schedule so tight instead of challenging it. You can't, we're going to have to do this now or whatever. I guess you have to because there are changes that you're not.
I mean, we have a set schedule, and there are some of our students that we just cannot. I mean, it upsets apple cart enough when, you know, Labor Day hits and they have a whole new set of classes or things like that. But I will tell you, you know, I mean, we have a monthly assembly the first Wednesday of every month. And we do have different events. You know, we'll have like a black cat chase around campus. We do like our own little black cat chase. We just seasonal, we have trick-or-treating on campus. We have a haunted house on campus, a haunted woods on campus.
That's interesting.
Well, it's great because it's run by our staff, so our staff know exactly which students want to be scared out of their minds and which students, would be scared if the pin dropped, you know, so they know exactly which students they should scare and which they should not. And they have the best time with that. One of them that has the best time with that is the mascot of the Legends game. No surprise. Personality-wise, of course he loves it. So, but you know, there is, we, like I was saying, once a month, the entire afternoon, there aren't any classes and everybody goes to the movie for the afternoon. The Frankfurt Movie Theater lets us have an entire theater just about once a month. Whenever we call and say, we need to see this football, me too, you know. So there is some kind of built-in time where the schedule is going to be off.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that, we hear from our parents that the student will be home and will say, it's 4:30 and at Stewart Home we're having dinner right now. Why don't you have dinner? You know, and the mother's like, are you kidding? I'm never going to be able to have dinner ready by 4:30. This is crazy. So, it happens, you know.
I missed your oldest student, what'd you say?
83.
And your oldest all time, you told me that is older.
We just lost our oldest, and that was, he was 92. So that was
Oh,
a couple months ago.
How functional was he?
It was, he was very, very, you know, he was still, he congestive heart failure. So he was really, you know, walking around, he had a hard time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
4th of July was his favorite holiday, so we're still having, you know, it was a hard story. He had flags all the way around his dorm, all the way around the entrance of his room on his dorm.
And he was still,
Incredibly active. I have to say that for our students, I mean, I know, like you all, you have younger students, but I think that the education component, or whether, you know, even going to work, is so important for our students that are older. It really keeps them active. I mean, it's the same thing that you hear about anybody that's aging. I mean, you hear that one of the worst things that you can really do is sort of retirement, where you're not doing anything during the day, having no physical activity or mental stimulation. So, I mean, he really actually, Dr. Stewart, the eldest Dr. Stewart is 86, and they grew up together. So, this, you know, it's just been really hard.
oh, it's really rough. Now, for the population of students that you have who are in the elderly range, for the most part, do their families work out trust scenarios for them?
We're never the trust officer. You know, they put someone in place. I mean, for some families, it's a sibling, then it's a nephew. You know, because some of our students are so old that, you know, and you know, for many of our students, you know, doctors perhaps said, you know, he or she will live until they're 18, and you know, here they are 40 and 50, and we're saying, see, you know. But it may be a cousin. There's always, we always want there to be somebody directing us. So we're never that, you know, we're never that person. We want somebody to hold us accountable.
Are you aware, this may be something that your students need to know at some point, that Kentucky has just started its first pooled trust? And it's when Karen Burks is an attorney. She oversaw the start of it as a board. There are trusts in other states. They're called pooled trusts, and the trust takes a percentage so that no particular family member has to be in charge of that, because it can be not a piece of cake to oversee all of that.
Trust. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's called
It says Karen.
it's called life plan.
Life plan.
I can let you know about it if it's something that
Yeah,
you need
just
to
email
know.
me. Well, we just want to know what's, you know, to kind of refer to families, because honestly, I mean, we are constantly trying to let our families know about these sorts of things.
Yeah. There are trusts that are in other states, and some they like and some they don't. The one that there's for example, one in Florida that they consider a good one in Indiana, I think, from different states, that they didn't consider a very good trust, not run so well, whatever. But you set it up so that the trustee gets a percentage of, you set it up, and it's not in Kentucky, that is not mandated by law. So you work it out with the trust, but this gives an option, and as your people who have trusts will know, you can set up a line of succession for your trustee, and maybe that pooled trust won't come in until third, fourth, or it might be number one, but you can set it up so that you've got a sibling and then a nephew, or whatever, and then third, fourth can be your pooled trust. And ideally, your trustee, I just know this because I've gone through this with my sister, so I'm not an expert on it, but I'm
Sure.
trying to do through it. It's a good idea, they say, for you to pay your trustee anyway, no matter what, if it's sibling, because it is some work. And not a small amount of work, but then you, the pool trust, doesn't take a whole lot of money, but it is some bit to handle what is required of a trustee. So that's something that you guys might want to know. I mean, because you can well imagine that you can run through, at those ages, you can run through some trustees.
Absolutely.
And they might want to keep it in the family to a point, but have a backup, because you never know. Understand? I mean, we put several
So important.
in our lives.
We have kind of seminars during family weekend every year on those exact topics, like, guardianship. We have trust officers that will come out and speak to our families because it's just, and it's ever changing, so much of it. So we just want our families to kind of be aware of what's going on.